Hello and welcome to another Plain Truth. And this week we're going to be learning about the differences between the captain and the first officer. Joining me, as always, is the legend that is Captain Al. Hi, Captain Al.
Hi, Matt.
So, I've always wanted to know, I know initially that the captain is in charge and the first officer is their second in command. But what are the differences between the captain and the first officer and what their roles are really as far as the airline is concerned? And also, as a first officer, how do you go from that to becoming a captain? Is it additional training, etc., etc.?
Okay, so let's start off at the very beginning of your statement then. So the captain's not in charge, the commander of the aircraft is in charge. And the reason I say that is that you may well have a flight with more than one captain on board.
Oh.
So the captain is a rank, but the commander is the legal position. So if you look at very long flights, say, for example, flights that are being done at the moment where carriers are going from the UK to China, loading up with cargo and then coming straight back. So nobody's going off to hotels, etc., etc. There will be more than one operating crew on the aircraft, perhaps two or three, in fact. There'll be several captains, that's a rank within the airline, but there will only be one commander at any one given time. So it's the commander who's legally in charge of the aeroplane. Now, typically in civilian aviation, that will be someone holding the rank of captain. In the Air Force, the commander of the aeroplane may not be the most senior person on board, but we'll stick to civilian for the time being. So the commander's in charge. So captains, senior first officers, second officers, they are all, if you like, various grades within that airline. So all airlines will have captains. Not airlines will have senior first officers, second first officers. They're just different names. So in some sort of South East Asian airlines, say Cathay Pacific, used to have second officers, first officers, senior first officers, and then captains. So it's basically revolves around experience. What I need to say from the very outset is that all of these are pilots, and they're all licensed pilots. They've all done the type rating. It's just about experience and time served within that airline if it's a seniority-based airline. If we start at the lower rank, so second officer, that will be typically someone who is new to the airline, low in experience, and they will just really be operating the aeroplane in the cruise phase. So on very long flights, we've discussed before that crew members will need to take rests. They'll go off to bunks or seats in the cabin. So you'll revolve, your crew members around. So the second officer will sit in one of the seats for a section of the cruise phase. And that's what they do. They don't do takeoffs. They don't do landings. Then when you've got a bit more experience, you'll get promoted to first officer. And then you might be in a position where you can be in one of the seats in the front for a takeoff or a landing. And again, the way that different airlines handle this is all different. So it may be that when you've reached the level that is appropriate for an upgrade to captain, you might hold the rank of senior first officer, or it might be based on number of years with the company or how many hours you have on type. Each airline has its own way of doing this. Then you will be biding your time to get your upgrade to captain. So the process of upgrade varies from airline to airline. So in some airlines, you might have been achieving the standard required to be a captain for quite some time, and it's just that you're waiting for someone to retire or die to free up a slot in the left-hand seat for you to get
Wow.
promoted. Dead man's shoes. If you're in an airline that doesn't have a seniority list and it's more a meritocracy, you'll probably get a faster command. If you're in a young and expanding airline, you're going to get a faster command. But as an example, the Australian airline Qantas, I know a guy who joined Qantas 25 years ago, and although he's more than capable, he is waiting for his upgrade slot. because the time to command prior to COVID was around about 26, 27 years.
Wow.
So what's involved in upgrading to captain? Well, quite a lot, actually, mainly because the airline entrusts to its captains a huge amount of responsibility. Obviously, you're entrusted with the lives of your passengers, but you're also making multi-million pound decisions on a daily basis. So it's quite senior management level, really. So they want to make sure that when they give you this autonomy to go off to various parts of the world and make decisions on behalf of the company, that they can be reasonably confident that you can make those decisions. And of course, a lot of those decisions will have been made in the air, where you don't necessarily have the capability to, phone a friend, take a 50-50, or ask the audience as to what you should do. It's on your shoulders. Now, of course, you can use all the resources available, speak to your colleagues, maybe organize a SATCOM call, etc., etc. But ultimately, it's you that's making the decision. So they want to have a careful analysis of what might be called the soft skills, because they know you can fly the aeroplane, because they're not going to give you the promotion if you've not been able to demonstrate that you can fly the aeroplane properly. So that's a given. So we're looking about all of the management skills and the decision-making skills. And key aspects are, what sort of guy are you going to be in the left-hand seat? Are you going to be a company man? Are you going to be a maverick? Are you going to be a good leader? Are you going to be a dictator? Are you going to command the respect of your crew? These are the sort of questions that are going to be asked of you. And, they're quite meaty, sort of subjects. They delve in quite a lot into your personality and your behavior. So the way that it tends to go in a lot of airlines these days is that there is quite a long assessment period. And even for airlines that have a very quick time to command, you'll be assessed for your capabilities in the management role. So what they might do is, when they're thinking about putting you for the upgrade to captain, they'll say, okay, Blogs, what we're going to do is you're going to fly in the right-hand seat as you do normally, but I, as the captain, are going to take a bit of a back seat, and you're going to, run the show, albeit from, the right-hand seat under supervision. And my best analogy for that is, I want you to imagine that you've been a passenger on a road journey. So someone's driven you from A to B countless times. But when you actually have to drive the car yourself from A to B, it takes a lot more effort to remember where you're supposed to be going, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there.
Yeah. So we've been sat fat, dumb and happy whilst we've been driven from A to B. But now we've got to do it ourselves. It's all of a sudden a bit more tricky when I've done the journey as a passenger loads of times. So what happens is that all of a sudden, really, the senior first officers, doesn't matter, suddenly get a little bit of they get to dip their toe in the water, and they suddenly realize that all of this stuff that they've just been watching and, baby being involved with is a lot harder than it looks. Now, I'm not trying to big the part up here, but as a captain, everybody tends to look at you. And it doesn't matter whether it's a case of, well, the crew meals haven't arrived, or we've got a passenger who's attacked another passenger, or we've got a fire. You get those same kind of looks, and people are looking to you for answers, leadership, calmness, and to take responsibility. What they don't want to see is, oh, well, you deal with it, I'm busy, or, well, don't ask me, I haven't got a clue. We want to see captains who appear very much like swans. So all sort of calmness and serene on the outside. And it doesn't matter whether you're pedaling like hell on the inside underwater. People don't see that. So no. that's what we're kind of looking for. It's someone who is able to break things down, use all of the skills that they have to problem solve and deal with things. And there are occasions where when people have their upgrade, that the power goes to their head, and they turn into absolute complete dictators. So we try very hard to prevent that happening. So that's some of the processes that go through. And then there is quite a comprehensive assessment in the simulator, where basically having already demonstrated that you know your stuff, they throw you in just about everything that they can possibly think of to see whether you break, really. It's not so much about how you deal with a problem, it's can you deal with the problems? Have you got what it takes to just keep the thing flying no matter what is thrown at you? Keep it away from the mountains, don't crash it into the sea, and just cope. And it's just to see how much you can be pushed, because people do break. And it's to see whether you've got a breaking point that's acceptable, really. And that's quite interesting to see, because quite often you'll be presented with scenarios that are quite a long way down the chain of likelihood. And you may have only seen this particular defect when you did your initial type rating, which might have been 20 years ago, which probably is a good indicator of how reliable model aeroplanes are. So you've been presented with a fairly unrealistic scenario that requires an awful lot of technical skill and an awful lot of management skill. Of course, you're not expecting a polished performance, because you're, for want of a better expression, potentially an inexperienced captain, but you're wanting to see that the right building blocks are there for the good decisions. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, very much so. I think it's safe to say then that perhaps all pilots don't necessarily suit the role of captain.
Indeed, there are quite a lot of people who don't want the role. They're quite happy to be a pilot and to fly the aeroplane, but they don't want the additional responsibilities, and that's fine. A lot of airlines kind of are a bit awkward about that, really, because they want to recruit captains. And ordinarily, you wouldn't go to an interview for a pilot's job in an airline and say, I don't want to be promoted. It doesn't necessarily display the right intent. But once you're within an airline, there are some people who go, actually, I just enjoy doing this. I'm quite happy being in the right-hand seat. I like flying the aeroplane. I don't like the challenges of the, additional responsibilities. And, you have to deal with an awful lot of sort of trivia, niff-naff, paperwork, lots of form filling when things happen. And of course, you do take on board all of the legal responsibilities. If you're unfortunate enough to have a death on board, you're responsible for the paperwork. If you have incidents with unruly passengers, well, it's you that's responsible for giving statements to the police and making sure that they're correctly worded, etc. So there is a lot to it, and it doesn't appeal to everybody. And there are people who go through the upgrade process and fail, and they will then go back into the right-hand seat, and it may be that they subsequently are promoted when they've had a bit more experience and a bit more guidance, or they just feel that it's not for them and they'll stay there. And actually, some of those are really great guys and girls to fly with, because they've got a wealth of experience, and they're not trying to display their potential command capability to you. So they're not trying to nip at the heels of the old guy. That they're quite happy with what you're doing, and just put the odd piece of really useful information into the equation.
As always, Al, fascinating. Many thanks.
It's a pleasure.
If you'd like to watch more from our great series, then you can do that by pressing here. We've also created you a playlist with all the Plain Truth episodes, and you'll find that just here. Why not like and subscribe to our channel? That way you will be notified whenever we post our great content. Or if you've got a question that you'd like Captain Al to answer, then why not pop it in the comments box below, and you may well feature on an upcoming episode of The Plain Truth.